Hi everyone, my name is Maddie, welcome back to my channel and welcome to my scarily big February wrap-up. So February started off as not a great reading month. I had work, I had a lot on, I didn't really have time to read very much as is standard for me. And I was like, you know, I'm not going to get through my TBR, I'm not going to do what I wanted. And did I get through my actual TBR? No, not at all. I went completely off-piste. But did I get through a lot of books? Yes, somehow in the last week of the month I just absolutely took off and read an absolute ton, and you can actually watch a vlog here if you want to see me read 6 books in a week. So it was a really good reading month overall. I'm really happy with it. I feel like it's got me back in the swing of reading. I feel like I'm more likely to be able to read a lot when I go back to work now. I'm back in love with it, which is really exciting because I feel like for a while it's been not a struggle, but just something I've had to like remind myself to do on top of everything else I have going on. So I'm very excited for it to be back to being something I just love doing and really want to do. So that's really exciting. Before we get into, as always, talking through the books that I read, we are going to very quickly go through some stats, as we always do. Starting off with the total number of books I read in February, which was 11, which I'm very, very happy with. And this does put my goal at the year at 19 out of 52. So assuming things don't go horribly wrong, I should definitely be on track to hit it. I'm like already 40% of the way there, which is terrifying considering how early we are in the year, like a bit less than 40%, but a lot, doing surprisingly well, very happy with that. But the total number of pages I read in February, 4,109. I am thrilled with that. My aim would have been technically like 2,800 because the aim of 100 pages a day, though that is not an official aim anymore because I just don't read consistently enough for it. So thrilled with 4,109, and then it's a total of 147 pages a day. Huge. And an average book length of 374. Huge. Don't know what happened. Enjoying myself though. Those are some nice stats. I wish we had stats like that every month, but it may well be a one-off. In terms of age range, what the books are like aimed at, I did have 6 books that were adult, 4 that were YA, and 1 middle grade, mixing it up a little bit. But as always, an almost 50-50 split between YA and adult. I really do not change what I read month to month, and it's quite funny. Then in terms of genre, I do have 5 fantasy books / sci-fi dystopian, sci-fi fantasy. We're gonna change that to sci-fi fantasy now. And then I had 5 contemporary books, and then I had 1 other, which was a historical fiction, so a bit different. And then for star rating, again, overall really good. I had 4 5-star reads, which is really good, though 2 of those were rereads of favourite books, so kind of expected. I then had 5 4-star reads, again, great, and then 1 3-star and unfortunately 1 2-star. The 2-star is the last book I will talk about because it's the last book I read. And when I originally read it, and in the vlog you can watch, I did say it was going to be a low 3. I have reassessed and moved it down to a 2 since then, and I will tell you why when we get to it. So, with the stats out the way, I guess now is the time to get straight into talking through all of these books. Starting with these 3 books, which I read in the first week of the month for Polathon. So, the first book I read in the month was The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. For those who do not know, this is like a Slavic, not quite retelling, but maybe kind of retelling of, I can't remember what folktale, it's not one I really knew. But it's, you know, set in Russia, it's historical, it's fantastical, it's got some magic in it. Evidence of this being a 3-star, I don't remember that much of what happened in it. I didn't love this at all. I really thought this was going to be like a new favourite of all time. Everyone that loves it loves Lady Taylor and Erin Morgenstern, people like that, so I thought I would love it too. It did nothing for me. I found it really slow to get through. I didn't really care for the characters. I think partially because the magic was such a small part of this book, and so it was basically just a historical tale, and I don't generally vibe with historical stuff. I don't choose to read it, I don't enjoy it, it's not my thing. I can get away with a historical setting when it's fantastical, but there wasn't even much magic in this. So it really wasn't for me. I found it really slow. It took me like 6 days to read, and it's only 300 pages or something like that. Yeah, 350, and yeah, it did nothing for me. I am thinking I might continue the series though, because a lot of people, when I said I didn't like this, commented like, I didn't like the first book either, was gonna DNF the series, but then books 2 and 3 are way better. So I'm thinking I might continue, because kind of why not? Like, I have it on my list of series to read this year, and I will obviously consider it crossed off if I DNF the series. I'm not saying like I failed that. I tried the series, I didn't vibe with it. I'm obviously not going to force myself to read books for the sake of crossing them off, but I'm not completely sure yet. I might continue it, but yeah, this was a 3-star. I don't have much else to say on it, honestly. It just was very middle of the road for me. I didn't particularly enjoy it, I didn't hate it. I found it a real slog to get through. It was just a 3, middle of the road, pretty average. Next up, I did read Cody by Jared Cullum, and this was really cute. This is like a YA graphic novel. I assume YA, it feels YA. Gorgeous art style, following this girl who goes to Alaska for the summer to live with her aunt or grandma, I think grandma, and stays in like the woods, and she meets a Kodiak bear and they become really good friends, and she has to move back to the city and he follows her to the city to try and find her. It's adorable. I absolutely loved it. Honestly, it was super, super cute. The art style is adorable and just so beautiful. I've shown it in vlogs before, like, but how they got so many expressions in the face of a bear, I do not understand, but I am obsessed with. Like, look at this little bean of a bear. I am obsessed with him. He's so cute. So this was a 4-star. Again, it didn't do a huge amount for me. It wasn't like a new favorite, but it was really cute and a really fun time, and I am still obsessed with the art style of this book. Like, completely obsessed. It's just beautiful. I think we're doing quick reviews today. I don't know why. I feel like I just don't have enough thoughts, but we're just gonna carry on. So the third book I read was Frost Heart by Jamie Littler. This was also a 4-star. This is like a middle grade adventure story. It was super good fun. I raced through this book so fast. I think I read it in like a day, which was so cool because it is like 400 plus pages. But I had so much fun reading this. The beginning of this book especially, I have said in the vlog and will say again, massive How to Train Your Dragon vibes. Big time. Slightly obscure, like geeky, gawky kid who doesn't quite fit in, doesn't do the whole vibe, has something about him that separates him in like this similar kind of like clan, feels like Viking-ish. It's not Vikings, but similar feeling. It's great. It was good fun. I really enjoyed this. I think I enjoyed it more than other middle grade I've read because it's older middle grade. This definitely, I would say, sits at the top of middle grade, which is where I can get away with reading it. Younger middle grade normally doesn't vibe with me, but this I really enjoyed, and I'm really excited because I own the sequel, and I think the third book's coming out this year, which is the completion of the trilogy. So I will almost certainly read the second book at some point between now and the third coming out, and then read the third, and I'm very excited for it. And I can see why this got so much hype, because it really deserves it. It is really, really good fun. Quick bit of story, this follows, I can't even remember the main character's name, Ash. This follows Ash, who has, what is it called? Oh my gosh, basically some kind of magical ability when he sings. And the people he is staying with don't like this, and he's been passed around from family to family to family. He thinks he's like an orphan, or at least his parents are not around. And he's been passed around because no one wants to keep him because they think he's a liability, they think he's dangerous. And basically he eventually accepts that he needs to go out and seek his parents because like he's not welcome where he is. And you know, he discovers that his power is not a bad thing. All of this, it's great. It was really good fun. So many good characters in this book. I had a thoroughly good time reading it. And then on to the next book I read, that was Dreams of Gods and Monsters by Laini Taylor. This was the third and final book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, which I was reading for Doe's Sabalong. Technically we finished this in January, but the live show, the final live, was like middle of February, so I read this at the beginning of February. And I had a great time with it. I don't have too much to say on this. I do actually have a whole video if you want to watch it, wrapping up this series with like full spoilery thoughts, as well as announcing Strange Along, which is what we're doing in April and May, which is reading Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares. So continuing on the Laini Taylor love train, and yeah, I had a great time reading this. I did not remember at all what happened in this book. This was like reading it for the first time for me, because I first read it 2 and a bit years ago, almost exactly 2 years ago now, because I read it in March of 2018, almost exactly 3 years ago now. What? 3 years ago. I was thinking it was 2, it was 3 years ago. Wow, I read this a long time ago. So I didn't remember it at all. I honestly, 90% of this I had no recollection of. The only thing was like certain events would happen and I'd be like, I feel like something's gonna twist, because I don't quite believe that, because I have an inkling from when I read it before. But this was a 5-star for me. Everything Laini Taylor's ever written is a 5-star for me. I loved this. I loved the characters so much. I love Karoo, I love Akiva, and Ziri, and Liraz, and everyone else, and I love them so much. And I'm kind of sad to be done with this series. I really hope Laini Taylor either revisits these characters or this world in some way in future. I think there's definitely scope to do that, and there is hints from other things she has said and written that imply that could be a thing. I don't know in what regard, but I would love it if she did. I really, really would love to read more in this world. Can we have like a, I won't say that, that's a spoiler. I was gonna ask about a specific novella. If you wanna watch the live show where we discuss this as well, those will be linked. There's a million places to see in-depth thoughts on this, but I loved it a lot. It was good fun. After that, I did read an ebook, mixing it up, and I read The Princess Trap by Talia Hibbert. This was like a 99p ebook I got. Please buy it, it's amazing. I think it's a bit more expensive now, but it's so good. This is a romance book, an adult romance, as Talia Hibbert tends to write. And it follows Cherry, who is sort of getting on with her life, and she meets this guy. They go to have like a one-night stand, but then the paparazzi come for them, and so his approach to getting the paparazzi to go away is to say they're engaged. Turns out he's the prince of a country, and they are now in a fake engagement. It's amazing. As always with Talia Hibbert, the banter was on point, the story was on point. This one had a much darker tone than a lot of hers that I've read. I've only read the Brown Sisters trilogy other than this. And there was like talk of abuse and things like that, so do keep that in mind, like child abuse and domestic abuse, not from the main couple, but from relatives. And you do kind of see it, so keep that in mind if you want to read it. But it was brilliant. I had the best time reading it. I read it in like a day and a bit. It was super fun. I just love Talia Hibbert's writing so much. The way she writes steamy scenes, the way she writes characters, the way she writes banter. It's just the best and I love it so much. Next up, I did read As Far As You'll Take Me by Phil Stamper. I read this for a blog tour, well, a Bookstagram tour, which I'm taking part in, which my post will be going up in like a week or so. And oh my God, this was so good. This was so good. I cannot cope. I absolutely bloody love this book. I did only give it 4 stars, which may seem confusing. Contemporary for me, I've really struggled to give a 5-star. I think this is like a 4.5, it's really high, but although part of it meant the world to me, it didn't quite scrape up to a 5-star for me, but you know, close enough. So this, As Far As You'll Take Me, Phil Stamper, follows Marty, who lives in Kentucky, and he is gay and he's out to his family, but his family are extremely conservative and extremely religious, so they're not exactly accepting of it. And so he auditions for a summer music program in London, doesn't get in, but tells his family he got in and then goes to London anyway with a view of never going back to Kentucky. So it follows him. It's such an interesting story. It's much heavier than Phil Stamper's previous book, which is like a light, fluffy rom-com. This obviously deals with homophobia. There is talk of like a slightly emotionally manipulative relationship. There is a lot of talk of disordered eating and anxiety and things like that. So all things to keep in mind if you're looking to read this one. But the thing which I've said in multiple videos that really sold me on this book and made me love it as much as I did was the way music was depicted. Marty plays the oboe, he has played flute before, he's like a woodwind player in orchestras and stuff, and so you see him play in orchestras and you see that camaraderie of an orchestra, and the way it's described, you can tell that Phil Stamper is a musician and has played in orchestras, and he actually did a whole thread on Twitter a while ago all about all the instruments he's played in all these orchestras. But you can tell just by reading it that he has experienced it and understands it. And as someone who has also experienced it, I spent my whole school years doing orchestras at like quite a high level. Oh my God, just the nostalgia and the want and desire to get back into playing music from reading this was insane. I have actually picked up my flute for the first time in like 2 and a bit years after reading this, and I'm planning to continue to do so because it's just reminded me how much I missed it. So talk about books influencing people, this one definitely did. But I had the best time. It's an adorable read, it's super quick, super fun, YA contemporary. I would highly recommend anyone checks this out, though obviously keep in mind the trigger warnings already mentioned, so homophobia, anxiety, slightly emotionally abusive relationship, and disordered eating. I also forgot to say, this is coming out on the 4th of March, so literally the day after this video goes up, so pick it up if you're interested. The next book I read, possibly my favourite of the month, Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert. This, oh my God, I love the Brown sisters so much. Get a Life, Chloe Brown, and Take a Hint, Dani Brown were 2 of my favourite books of last year. I absolutely loved them. I don't think they quite made my favourites list, but I did love them. And so, of course, I was going to pre-order Act Your Age, Eve Brown. Luckily, I hadn't got around to pre-ordering it yet because the publisher sent me a copy, which was very unexpected, so thank you to them for sending me a copy. And this comes out on the 9th of March for anyone who wants to pick it up, which should be all of you, honestly, it's phenomenal. This is another adult romance. It's the best thing I've ever read. 5 stars, no question. The banter in this book, the characters, it's just, I can't describe how much I loved it. I had the best time reading this. I read it within like 12 hours, realistically. It's just so much fun and just, oh, the characters and the way their relationship grows is so interesting, and it's very much like a friends first kind of relationship, which I like. It's not like childhood friends to lovers or something like that. It's actually kind of enemies to lovers. But you see this solid, fast friendship form before they become a couple, which I really like. It gives such a solid basis for the relationship. But oh, it's so good. It's so good. The steamy scenes were on point. Not too many of them, but oof, good. Loved that. But it's the banter. The way Eve speaks is the funniest bloody thing I've ever read. Like, so many lines that had me crying laughing. It was just amazing. I could not recommend this book highly enough. I think it is probably my favourite out of the three, though Take a Hint, Danny Brown is so close behind it. But I loved it. Recommend it. Read it. 9th of March. Please read it. You are doing yourself a favour by picking that book up. The next book I read was Battle Royale by Koshin Takami. This was the Burned Books Club pick for January and February. If you want to take part in the Burned Books Club, just quickly, it is a dystopia book club run by me and Spoops. Links down below to the Discord, the Twitter, all of that. We are reading Day of the Triffids next, which is really cool. But this is what we read in January and February. I, of course, read it right close to the deadline. I started it 2 weeks before the live show, and then shit went down, and so I finished it the day of the live show, because, you know, can't possibly be organised and finish it earlier. This was a 4-star for me. It didn't quite live up to what I was hoping it would be, but it was really good. As a premise for this does follow a group of school children who are basically randomly selected to be put into a battle royale, a last man standing competition, kind of like you would have been familiar with because of Hunger Games. However, this did come out before Hunger Games. There is debates of plagiarism, but we're not getting into that here. So it was a really interesting concept. I did enjoy it. I loved the first like 100 or so pages. The middle like 300-ish I found a bit slow, I found quite repetitive, and then the end I thought was really good. And I do think that's partially because of how I read it. I read it quite spread out. I was reading like maybe 50 pages a day, quite a lot. So I don't think the book lends itself to being read like that. It lends itself being read in like 2 or 3 days, but obviously for a lot of people that's not possible. So I think it's an interesting thing to consider. Like, how good is a book if it can only be read in a certain way? I don't know. I'm not saying that is a good or bad. It's just an interesting thought. But yeah, it was good. I enjoyed it. I really liked some of the characters. The characters did a lot for me. I loved Shinji, I loved Shuya, I loved Tawada. I quite liked Mitsuko, like loads of great characters. And I think that really drove the story for me. I think if I hadn't had that, I would have been really quite bored, because I at least was looking forward to finding out what those characters were up to. So it was a good book. It didn't get the reaction out of me I was hoping. Like, loads of people read it and you see them going like, oh my god, at the end. And I was like, oh, cool. It didn't hit me in that way, which is fine in comparison to something like this, where I think I was like dying on the floor when I finished it. So didn't do as much for me as I wanted, but it was a 4-star, it's a good read. I would recommend giving it a go if you can deal with a lot of very graphic violence, because this book does not hold back on gore and violence, which I feel like is realistic for what it's trying to say, but just be prepared. Not that I think you can be with some of these scenes, but be prepared. Next, I did read Descender Volume 1. This is a sci-fi graphic novel following sort of a place where robots have been a thing, like a futuristic world. I don't know if it's going to be our world or not. There are humans as well as other creatures, and robots have been created, and then in some regard these robots kind of turn on people and there's like a big massacre, I think, and then basically this one rogue robot is found and they're trying to get into what's happened to him so they can work out why the robot's turned. I think kinda, I'm not gonna lie, the world building at the beginning of this was long and dense, so I'm not sure I fully got all of it. This was like a 4-star for me. It was good. I found the world building too much. I would have liked to have slower expose throughout the book as it was going instead of like this big chunk at the beginning, but nonetheless it got very interesting by the end. I was starting to get invested in the characters and the story and all of that, and I would be very intrigued to try the second volume because I think I would enjoy it a lot more. Now I kind of have a grip on how the world works. So yeah, not my favourite, not like an instant new favourite thing ever, but I enjoyed it, it was good. Next was another reread, and that was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I read this 2 years ago, January 2019, and absolutely loved it. I gave it 5 stars, I loved it. It started a whole love for Taylor Jenkins Reid for me. I've read many of her books since and loved almost all of them. And I knew I'd wanted to reread this for ages, never got around to it. Finally got around to it, and God, I'm so glad I did. I love this book so much. It is so clever. It is so interesting, it is beautiful, it is heartbreaking, I love it. Bit of a premise, there is this actress called Evelyn Hugo who has been like famous for years and years and years, and she is now much older and invites someone to come and they believe write an article on her, but in fact she is telling her whole life story. And she is finally revealing her whole life because, as it says in the title, she had 7 husbands. She did all sorts of interesting things throughout her life and no one really knows why or how. So it's basically just her recounting the tale of her life, but it's, you know, Hollywood in the 50s through 70s. It's just gorgeous, honestly. I loved it so much. And I love that Evelyn Hugo is such a bad person, basically. She openly says, like, I don't want you painting me in a light that makes me like I did all these things for a good reason. Like, I know I did bad things. I know they were bad. I knew they were bad when I was doing them. And I would happily do them again to get what I want and to get what I think I need. And I just respect that, honestly. I find it really fascinating to read about. Like, nothing held back, just that honest truth. And it was really great. When reading this, I wasn't sure if I was gonna give it like a 4-star, and then I cried 3 times within the last 50 pages, and I was like, okay, it's a 5-star, isn't it? Big love for this book, recommend it. Of course, it's LGBT, just please read it. It's so, so good. And also, I would say if you're not someone who likes historical fiction, read it anyway. I do not like historical fiction. I've already said that once in this video, yet I love this book. It doesn't feel historical because it's just character driven. You're just learning about these characters and how they acted. Like, the only thing that would make it feel historical is sort of the societal norms. So like sexism and stuff like that, and views on LGBT people are obviously very different back in the day. And also lack of technology. Other than that, you wouldn't even really know it was set like that. It's just a story about people, and it's brilliant. And then the final book I read, the most disappointing book of the month, Love in English by Maria E. Andrew, which I did end up giving 2 stars. This was sent to me by Harper360, so thank you to them for sending it to me. I thought I would love this book. I thought it was going to be a fun YA contemporary with a bit of a twist with the whole language thing, and it didn't do it for me. So this is a YA contemporary story, and it follows this character, Anna, who has just moved to the US and barely speaks any English, and it follows her kind of struggle with learning to speak English. And there's a lot of like little excerpts of poetry and pieces of writing which highlight some of the weirdness of the English language. So like an example that's not in the book but one I know is the sentence, English can be learnt though through tough thorough thought. Though through tough thorough thought all have an O-U-G-H-T or O-U-G-H in them, none of them have the same vowel sound. It's ridiculous. English is a stupid language built on exceptions. But I felt like even the small little bits of that it brought out didn't really interest me. They were not that inventive, they weren't that interesting. If you're someone who has even a vague interest in funny things like that, you will have already seen them all. So it didn't do too much for me. The characters were nondescript. The plot was not that interesting. As I said, I really did enjoy the aspect of seeing that view of coming to a country and not knowing the language, especially as someone who speaks English. Literally anywhere I go in the world, I can probably get by and communicate because English is a language that just wrongly or rightly everyone learns. I feel like it is wrong. We should make more effort to learn other languages, but that is the reality of our world. So it was really interesting seeing the flip side of that, because obviously it's something I will never experience in that way. And I really liked how her language ability progressed throughout the book, and it was never mentioned, but you can watch it happen. And for example, I guess this is maybe slightly spoilery, near the beginning of the book, I don't know if you can see, where is it? Here. There's hashes in the middle of a sentence. That means she's missing the word, and you never get told what they said, you just miss it with her, which is really quite cool and quite jarring. And that obviously happens less and less throughout the book, which is cool. So it was a cool concept. I felt like execution was lacking. I think this was younger YA, even though they're meant to be 16, it did nothing for me. I was really bored. I considered DNFing it. If it wasn't for the fact that I could literally read this whole book in about 3.5 hours, I would have DNF'd it, but because it was so quick, I powered through and just finished it. Wasn't for me, 2 stars, you know, and I just yeeted it off the fucking stack of books. So that plus The Princess Trap are the books that I read in February. As I've already said, I am really happy with how my reading went in February. I got through so much more than I expected because of that last week where I read all of these books in that last week. It was a good week. But I had a really good time. Lots of really good books, some really fun rereads. I don't often give myself the time to reread books, so that was a nice change. Some fantastic new favourites. I just had a thoroughly good time. So that was my February reading. Thank you for watching this. If you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up, comment down below how your reading went. Subscribe if you want to see more content from me. Links to the book clubs and everything that I've mentioned are down below as always. as well as links to all my other social media and anything if you want to find me elsewhere. But that is it for the video, so bye, and I'll see you in the next one.